welcome to a new Getting to Know Japan webinar. Thank you for joining us, and a big thank you to our program sponsor, the Japan Foundation New York, for funding this series and enabling us to put this on each week. Today, we are joined by Mr. Peter MacIntosh, who will be presenting on Geisha, Past, Present, Future. Mr. Peter MacIntosh is originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia. He made a pivotal decision at the age of 22, influenced by his mother, who was a folk artist, and his journey led him to Kyoto in 1993, the once ancient capital of Japan, renowned for its rich culture and spiritual heritage, characterized by traditional values, temples, and shrines. His appearances in numerous travel shows and collaborations with international projects include his involvement in the location scouting for Hollywood's Memoirs of a Geisha, and endowed him with self-assurance to conceive, produce, and direct his inaugural feature-length documentary, Real Geisha, Real Women, in 2009. During the same period, he pioneered the course Geisha, Past, Present, Future within the Japanology segment of Kansai University's International Studies Department. Mr. MacIntosh established Kyoto Sights and Nights, a leisure and entertainment enterprise, in 2002. To read more about Mr. MacIntosh's endeavors, please visit the YCAP's website. Mr. MacIntosh, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. Hey. Well, thank you all for joining and watching today. I'd just like to talk about geisha culture. Let's start off with the term geisha. What does it actually mean? Well, the term gei, G-E-I, gei means art, and sha, person or people of, so people of the arts. However, in Kyoto, we use two different terms. One for the young ladies between 15 to 2021, we call them maiko, specialist of dance, and 2021 onwards, we call them geiko, specialist of the arts. In Kyoto, we have 5 geisha districts. Here we are, 5 geisha districts. I don't know if you can see the lanterns, but in totaling about just over 200 maiko geiko, the youngest one being 15, 16. The oldest one still working in Kyoto now is 91, believe it or not. Very healthy, a very healthy woman. Well, the term geisha wasn't really always associated with women. If you look on the screen, you can see, I don't know, you probably recognize them more from the woodblock prints, the oidan or the taiyu. They were the top level courtesans, or for lack of a better term, professional women back in the day. So you have to remember, in the Edo period, 1603 to 1867, 68, there was a caste system. So you had a hierarchy. You had the aristocrats and the samurai at the top, landowners, artisans, merchants, artists, and kind of a gypsy caste. So the merchants, they had a lot of financial power, but they didn't have much social status. So they weren't allowed to spend their money freely. However, in the walled-in pleasure quarters, they were. And, you know, they had a lot of money, but they weren't getting a lot of respect. But in the pleasure quarters, they were allowed to spend it freely with these courtesans. And these courtesans, although they were professional women, they were the highest ranked entertainers in Japan. They were studying such arts as incense appreciation, waka poetry, song, and dance. And the merchants were loving getting this culture, getting respect, spending their money freely, maybe a little bling, 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 making it rain where they couldn't do it on the outside. However, you can imagine after a while, incense smelling became a little boring. So they needed someone to liven up the party. And just like the English court had the court jester, this was your first geisha. They were males. They were called taikomochi, hokan-san, or otoko geisha. You can see the photo in the lower left corner. That's a modern day taikomochi, male geisha. So that was great. Needless to say, the taikomochi's entertainment was a little less refined. Banter was a little bit more risque. However, it wasn't until the mid-1700s that a female of a lower professional class said, something's wrong here. I'm better looking than these guys. I can sing and dance. Hey, why not a female geisha? You know, Japan being Japan, things don't change overnight. So it took a few decades. So they said, a few decades later, they said, oh my God, that's working. And we can tax them. So we're going to let females become geisha as well. However, there's some rules: no sitting next to customers, no fancy hair ornaments, and no stealing the courtesan customers, which meant no offering the pillow for financial compensation. And that's how it all started. So that's the beginning of female geisha culture as we know it today. Now, just to give you some visual differences, starting from the worst possible example of what a geisha looks like in the lower right corner, these are tourists dressed up as Michael. You can notice the difference between the kimonos if you take a close look, polyester and whatever it is, compared to the beautiful silks worn by the women on the left. So on the far left, in the blue kimono, you have a Michael. You can tell it's a Michael for her long sleeves and her kimono. Her hair is natural compared to the geiko with the shorter sleeves and wearing a wig. So if you look to the photo adjacent to it, you can see the long dangling obi on the left of the Michael. That's 7.5 meters long. And the geiko in the purple kimono, about 4.5 meters long. So that's your visual difference between a Michael and geiko, not just the age. Now, because the Michael wear their hair up like that for 1 week at a time, they unfortunately have to sleep on these very uncomfortable looking pillows. So I've taken the geisha abroad for many events, and they have to bring their pillow with them because we cannot bring a hairdresser with us. So one time a girl forgot her pillow, so we had to use a toilet paper roll with a towel through it wrapped around it, so she wouldn't crush her hair for the whole week. So a lot of people say, well, modern day, before I talk about how to, a lot of people ask me, why do young ladies these days want to become a Michael? You know, it's a pretty disciplined, dedicated life to the arts. Well, think about it. You get to wear $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of kimono every day. You meet celebrities. You eat at the best restaurants. You travel around the world sometimes. Not bad. So, however, some of the young women forget that it is a real job and therefore kind of drop out. So the first thing you have to be female. Finish junior high school, which is grade 9, so 15, 16 years old, and you need parental permission. You can't just run off and join the circus type thing. So you're going to have to send your application into one of the registry offices or a boarding house. So let me backtrack a little bit here. So think of all 5 geisha districts as a unique union, guild, or co-op. They all are they run themselves, and they're all, although they're related in the Kyoto geisha community, they're all different entities. So each district has a theater, a school, and when I say school, think of the Juilliard School of the Arts, and a registry office where all the number crunchers are. And that's usually the only place the men have any power in the district. The women run the rest of the district. So you either send your job interview, which probably is not that impressive at 15 years old, probably a nice photo and a handwritten letter of why you want to become a Michael, and your what sports or what club teams you're a part of. You send that in at the registry office, then the registry office will ask any of the boarding house mothers. So when I say boarding house mother, that's a woman who's going to invest into your career. So by investing in your career, it could be anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. So therefore, you and your parents and everybody has to be on board for a 5, 6, 7-year contract maximum, with about 2 days off, 4 days off, and no salary. So it's quite a demanding contract. So once you get accepted there, you move into the boarding house. So you see the far left photo. These are the young girls who just got accepted into the house in their Western clothes. The next photo, they're just coming back for their lessons. They're wearing their polyester kimono, so they're not fully, they haven't made their debut yet. And then the far right photo, they had just passed their dance test, probably anywhere from 6 months to 10 months later, and they're getting prepared for their debut as a Michael. So their debut of a Michael is very important. They find you a mentor or a big sister, and you share, how would you say, guarantee that relationship by doing this drink sakazuke, shared sake with your big sister. You consolidate that relationship. That's the word I was looking for. And to show respect to your big sister, you take 1 or 2 characters from their name into your name, as you can see here. Katsu-sen, Katsue, Katsuhina, Katsutomo from right to left. So also you have ochaya. Now, ochaya are tea houses, which don't serve a lot of tea, to be quite honest. They're more like members-only entertainment clubs, which act as a concierge between the customers and the Maiko Geiko. You never hire them directly. So think of ochaya-san as the booking agent for the Maiko Geiko. And to become a member, it's just like any country club or private tennis club. You need a member to vouch for you. They have a system that's called Ichigen San no Kotowari. First-time visitors are refused, or members only. And that is because at these tea houses, you get an account with that introduction. And there are no big bouncers at the tea houses, although the mothers can be quite scary. They don't take credit cards, and you don't know the price of your bill until the end of the month when you get the love letter, AKA the bill. So the only love letter you really don't want to receive, huh? So, of course, here you are. You have the different hair ornaments that they wear. The Maiko, the geisha, the karyukai, or the flower and willow world, concentrates on a lot of the changing of the season, appreciation of the changing of the seasons, and that's no more visible than invisible in the Maiko's hair ornaments. So the pine, bamboo, plum blossom for January, plum blossom for February, rapeseed blossom for March, cherry blossom for April, wisteria for May, weeping willow for June, Japanese fans for July, the Japanese pampas grass for August, Chinese bellflower for September, chrysanthemum October, November maple leaves, and December kabuki maneki, where they have their favorite kabuki actor's signature in their hair ornament. So of course, with beautiful kimonos come beautiful accessories, because the Maiko are not allowed to wear jewelry or ear piercings, no nail polish. So what they're wearing in their hair and on their kimonos is their jewelry. Some other accessories are their little bags that carry their dancing fans, their Hello Kitty notebooks, and you see their senjafana, their, for lack of a term, business cards or remember me cards. And you can tell a Maiko where she is in her career by what her hair is like. This is the Wari Shinobu hairstyle for a junior. Then you go into the more senior one, Ofuku, and different festival hairstyles during the year for the senior Maiko. And then you have young Maiko preparing for her changing of the color, which we call. It was the couple weeks before she becomes a geiko. And this is the final, excuse me, this is the final hairstyle before she becomes a geiko. And then changes her color. They have the danpatsushiki. The sumo wrestlers, when they retire, they cut their top knots. We do this for the Maiko when their final evening of a Maiko. Only regular customers get to witness this. And then they prepare for their erikai, as I said, changing of the color, and they become a geiko. Now, a lot of people say, what do they study? What is the gay in gay? Do they study conversation? Well, I don't think too many 15, 16-year-olds are going to blow you away with their conversation. So everyone has this particular role at the parties. So first, if they don't study the arts, there's not a geisha anymore. They're just a sha, a person of something, or ningen. So you can't really see the schedule board, but they study things like, of course, sometimes they all study tea ceremony in the beginning. They study the drumming, the flute, the shamisen, singing, and of course, dancing. Maiko has to study dancing because specialists of dance. There you can see some better. The shamisen to the upper right, the singing, and the middle photo in the bottom. You see the flute, the different styles of drumming, and the shamisen. And the more fun part for the customer, anyway, are the ozashiki entertainment parties. So everyone asks me, what do geisha do? What do geisha do? I'm like, whatever you want, except what, unfortunately, people think they do. Some people misunderstand. So you want to go to karaoke, you can go to karaoke. You want to have a big party, You hire them for a big party. You want to go out for dinner with your wife and you have a nice, pleasant evening, not talking about the bills and things like that, talking about fluffy, fun things and food. Or you're just a business person, male or female, and you don't have the gift of the gab. So you have an important client coming in town and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So you call your tea house mother, you say, help. So she'll arrange the entertainment for you. You put your guest in front of the alcove, in front of the scroll. The geisha come into the room, greet you, greet the room, and then they know whose cup of beer to keep full all night. So entertainment facilitators would be another term. Okay, I shouldn't be showing that upper right-hand corner one, but they do like to play drinking games. That's another big part of it. As I told you, they go bowling. There's karaoke, out for dinner with couples. And because I worked on the movie and I taking the geisha abroad, we took them to watch Memoirs of a Geisha. They travel around Japan for events, photo shoots, media. You know, a lot of people after the book Memoirs of a Geisha came out in 98, 99, there's a lot of interest from foreign countries on the geisha culture. So a lot of media were coming around wanting to do interviews. Now this is fun. This is a fun event they have in February, Setsubun, celebrating the Lunar New Year. You've seen the lower right corner. That's the most famous geisha of all, Kyoto. Take a close look at that. Does that person look familiar to you? That's me. Remember, you cannot unsee that image. So you can see the geisha in not normal kimonos, having some fun. They go around to all the different tea houses and entertaining unusual skits, you know, kind of lighten up the atmosphere for the cold winter. And that's regular customers sometimes participate as well. Sometimes we even might get a discount if we participate. And of course, as I mentioned, they travel abroad, flying on airplanes with their hair still up. To San Francisco back a few years ago, the Asian Art Museum exhibition. That's Paris. New York. England, playing darts in a pub, like you would expect. Finland, they seem to have met a similar face painted person. Ireland, I think the man in the lower left is a little underdressed for the occasion, but who knows? It's Amsterdam. So I'll get a lot of trouble for showing this photo because the Michael aren't supposed to have cell phones. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This was my cell phone. I just wanted the photo. So yeah, the Michael are not supposed to have cell phones, not until they become a geiko or move out of the house. So in the future, so the young lady in the middle, she was a geiko. She retired to get married and has children, happily married. Of course, the internet is going to play a big part of it, I think, in the future. I mean, how can it not? The internet, it's all over. Look what we're doing right now. Unfortunately, some of the things I think that are going to change is the ozashiki, the entertainment on the second floor of the tea houses. It's going to become more shows, you know, more easier accessible shows, even online parties. And this is what the future of Kyoto looks like. Look how many people are on the streets there, the bad behavior and everything. So Kyoto is going to have to deal with a lot of things. So yeah. So I'm just going to flip back to the very beginning so I can just talk a little bit more about so first of all, let me explain how I got into it. You're probably thinking, how did this white male Canadian guy get involved in geisha culture? Well, I came in 93 as a 22-year-old former professional soccer player, and unsuccessful, only 1 year pro. The team went bankrupt. I was not good enough to go play big time in Europe. So I was going to do a gap year before I did my master's in journalism. So coming over with the Japanese skill level of Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto, for those of you who know the song from the 80s, that was my Japanese skill level. I came over very naive, obviously with too much luggage, as you can see on the left, and I arrived in Kyoto. So I didn't know how long I was going to be here. So I started collecting telephone cards and postcards of the geisha because I thought they're fascinating. I was getting into photography. And then one night I went into a disco. We call them clubs now, I guess. And I saw this Maiko in full regalia. And I was sober because I was feeling sick that night. So I know I wasn't seeing anything. And then seeing things, sorry. And then she left. So being the naive foreigner I was, I decided to follow her outside and see what was going. Why is she here? And I kind of went up to her as a naive foreigner as I was and kind of pointed to my postcard or telephone card and said, "Is this you?" She looked at me like very politely, like, "Take a hike, but no." And then this gentleman wearing an ascot, very dapper gentleman, walked over to me and said, "Oh, this is a Michael girl." I said, "Yeah, I know. Look right here." He goes, "No. Where are you from?" I said, "Canada." Let's go. And we hopped into a taxi. And for that night on, I had a sugar daddy for 6 years. And there's the photo of that night in the lower right-hand corner. Look at me, as sick as I had a fever like anything, but I wasn't passing up on this opportunity. So yeah, Mr. Ito has been without meeting him that night, I probably would not be in Japan 30 years later. And because of this, the introduction only policy, I got to travel, go around to the tea houses with him, and all the doors started opening. But at that time, I didn't speak much Japanese, so I started learning more Japanese. So yeah, so that's thanks to Mr. Ito, I'm still here, and unfortunately, he's 85 now, so he doesn't come out a lot, especially during COVID. But I am friends with his son, and we go out every once in a while as well. So it's been, thanks to him, my life changed. If it wasn't for that serendipitous meeting that night in a disco with a Maiko, it sounds funny just saying it, my life would be totally different. So a lot of people ask me, what do I like about the geisha culture? And for me, it's being an athlete. I know that, when you put yourself in full on something, the dedication, the discipline that comes with it, or lack of discipline that makes you unsuccessful with it. So I do respect a lot of, these young women at 15, 16 years old make a life decision at a young time in life, and the ones who go full into it, they lose their teenage years, and that's not always fun, where all their friends back home are going to karaoke all the time, or sleeping in, or having fun playing on the soccer team or whatever team they play on. These women are dedicated, and with a very strict hierarchy as well. Your mentors are very strict. You say, "Hello, big sister, I love that pink flower." The older sister say, "That's not pink, that's purple." "No, that's blue." And then you go, "Oh, I guess it's blue then." So it's a very strict hierarchy, a lot of discipline. And I respect their dedication. And also for me, being a male and a photographer, and the visual beauty of it, but also the way these women are strong and yet feminine. They get to balance these two traits very well. You don't want to, they just, yeah, what would I say? Yeah, it's just a nice fine balance of strength and femininity, and with mixed in with all the arts. It's just a wonderful thing about the Geisha district that I love. So are we about ready to do some Q&A?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. MacIntosh, for this wonderful presentation. Really, really, really interesting, and a lot of really great information. So if it's okay, I'd like to start off with a question of my own. So at the very beginning, you mentioned about these 15 and 16-year-old Maiko, girls who become Maiko, and how they need permission from their parents. Is becoming a maiko and essentially becoming a geisha, is that something that's honorable within the Japanese family, or how is that viewed amongst, Japanese families?
Well, a lot of the girls come from, first of all, the women in Kyoto, the percentage of maiko from Kyoto is only about 10%. So they come from all over Japan to be a maiko, because the maiko culture really only exists in Kyoto. So, I mean, if you're a parent and your 15-year-old, 16-year-old daughter goes, I want to go to Broadway, you're like, oh, okay. It's because it's a Mizushobai. Mizushobai, like the water trade, here today, very fluid, here today, gone tomorrow, the floating world. Uncertainty in Japan is not they're not a big fan of it, shall we say, in Japan. Uncertainty. They like things that are very, straight, straightforward. So a lot of people would probably don't want to say goodbye to their daughter, sending her off to a world that they probably don't know much about as well. However, is it looked down upon? I don't think it's really looked down upon as much. I guess it depends on where you are in society, but and the thing is now, a lot of these girls aren't choosing it for a lifelong career. The only problem is in Kyoto, you're not allowed to be a married geisha or geiko. So a lot of them do quit to get married. So even you might just do it for the first 10 or 15 years, and then you can, go back to a normal life, if you want to call it normal or whatever. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it's more of a, having that uncertainty in your life is how it's a questionable career, I think, career choice, rather than looked down upon.
Very interesting. And so that leads me into my next question. So you mentioned that in Kyoto, they're not allowed to get married and be a geisha, but because of the population decline and all of these, issues that will come with that, do you think in the future perhaps this rule will be modified so that maybe, they can maintain this like tradition or culture of geisha in Kyoto, but at the same time, women don't have to choose between, this perhaps lifelong career and then also having a family?
Well, one thing, you can have children in Kyoto without being married and still be a geiko. Doesn't happen so much anymore, but in the past it did. So if you wanted just to have a family, it's possible. But that's a very good question, because I think, things are going to have to change in the future. I think maybe allowing getting married. However, the reason I asked an 80-year-old geisha years ago, why aren't geisha allowed to get married? She goes, I don't want to get married because I don't want no dishpan hands. And she goes, and if I get married, then I'm no longer a geiko. So you guys can't have it both ways, So, but I think it's an option they probably should think about. And also, my other opinion would be to let them start at a later age, 18, after finishing high school rather than junior high, just in case things don't work out. I think a 15-year-old girl of 2023, 2024 is a lot different than a 15-year-old girl from 1975,
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So the next question comes from Jeff. So you mentioned maiko trainees consolidating the mentor-mentee relationship by sharing sake with their mentor. I'm curious, you mentioned that many trainees are quite young, 15, 16 year old. Are they even sharing sake at this young age, under 20? I can imagine in the past this was accepted with no question, but how about these days?
You know what? I haven't been to a ceremony for a while, but I'm sure it's only just wetting of the lips or something like that. They're not banging them down, if they're under 20. They've become quite strict on that recently, to be quite honest. But in the old days, I'm sure, it wasn't. Even in Japan now, it's very easy to come across alcohol without being penalized. They sell it in vending machines, so it's, but I think it's more ceremonious than, getting drunk with your big sister, so to speak.
Thank you so much. So the next question comes from Kiana Dunn. What is the significance of the fan hair ornament for July? Why not another flower?
Well, they do let me see. So from the summer months, when the beginning of summer months, they actually geisha pass out these uchiwa fans to their customers. So I think it coincides with that. I mean, there could be other flowers in July as well, I'm sure, but it's usually the fans. Yeah, I'm not sure. Some people, there's butterflies in them as well. Some of them with the fans. I mean, the variations I showed you were not only the ones they use. There's slight variations of each month as well. So, but usually I can't remember if there's another one for July. There might be another one they use as well, but that's the main one they use. Yeah. And I think it's because they gave out these uchiwa to their regular clients.
Very interesting. Thank you. Vivian Ying asked, what is the difference between the geisha in Kyoto compared to the others who use the same term geisha in other parts of Japan, like shitamachi, geisha in Tokyo, for example?
Well, there's a lot of differences, not so much with the women themselves, but first of all, the training in Tokyo, there's no maiko. They're hangyoku-san. They start at 18 there. A lot of them don't live in boarding houses anymore. It's what was I say? It's a different culture. Like there's no tea house culture there as well. They get hired through ryotes, expensive restaurants in Tokyo. So it's a little different system. I mean, there are 7 districts in Tokyo. They just call them geisha there. And Kyoto uses a lot of different terminology for everything. Geiko, the old term was geigi. So terms change after during history, but also the Kyoto has a lot of different terms for everything. We have a different dialect. So just right there, that gives a reason to use a different term.
So mentioning about the tea houses and also going back to what you said about like tea not really being served in tea houses anymore. So is this becoming like a dying culture essentially? Since now alcohol is much more preferred?
Well, tea house culture came about before even the geisha were around. They were all called tea houses because back in the day, powdered green tea was a luxury item. It wasn't like it is today where, get it for $5 at the temple type thing. So back in the day, having tea, being invited, being able to go to a place that served tea showed you were fairly financially well off. Whereas today, drinking tea is great. Tea ceremonies are very prestigious. But I just think the alcohol makes it a lot more fun. And believe me, you can get tea at a tea house if you want. You don't have to drink alcohol. You don't have to. You can drink water. You can drink soda water. You can drink Coca-Cola, whatever. I just usually joke that you can't get tea, and they not a lot of tea being served at a tea house. That's all.
Thank you so much. So Catherine Mazur asked, can you detail that early transition from young male geisha to young girls? I'm interested in how they interacted and how this relates to early kabuki's transformation from okuni's female troupe to the onagata. Did the samurai government censor women and start the licensed quarter then?
So kabuki changed from a woman, Izumon Okuni, to young boys, wakashu kabuki, and it's just because the behavior that was getting out of hand. You had licensed quarters, and you have to remember with every government and you have 47 prefectures now. Back in the Edo period, there are many more fiefdoms, many more fiefdoms. So I'm sure you had the basic rule of law, but you also had different rules of law for different fiefdoms, I'm sure. From the male to the woman, it's just from the male geiko to the female geisha. I'm sure it's just well, they used to move pleasure quarters around too, because every time you moved a pleasure quarter around, you built a new economic district with it. So the Shimabara in Kyoto moved a couple times, and I just think it's all just as we call it, what do you call it? I don't know, just making different rules for you had public. You had views of the public doing things outside in the public. So let's put them in the Walden pleasure quarters. As how much could you tax it? I don't know the exact transition, why and when, but I just gave you the basic story why it happened. I can't tell you the exact reason why it happened. I'm not a historian on regulatory law in Japan. I just think the more things, more jobs you could tax, the better for the government.
That makes total sense. So Rowan Davis asked, in Memoirs of a Geisha, some bullying and the victim's revenge were told. How common were these instances? Do they still happen, and what systems are in place for reporting it?
Well, even in the sumo world, there was something happened a few years back where a young boy died after being beat by with a Coke bottle by some of his stablemates. So of course, when Memoirs of a Geisha was set, when the fictional novel was set back in the 20s, I wasn't around, so I don't know. I know that you cannot get away with things like that today. And to be quite honest, when I took the geisha to the Memoirs of a Geisha, their biggest comment of what they didn't like about the movie is how the two girls were always at each other, especially in front of customers. Because she said, that's not classy, that's not who we are. People don't hire us so we can bicker in front of each other or be cheeky to each other. So, it's a woman's world. I'm sure, just like a men's sports world, there's some hazing, maybe, who knows. That's one thing about being a customer. The least I know about what goes on behind the scenes, the more fun I have. Ignorance is bliss, shall we say.
I'm curious with that. So there is a dynamics that you mentioned about, the Maiko and the geisha and this kind of like big sister, little sister dynamic. This kind of relationship, does this translate over into like after they retire? Like, do they still have this, closeness between, their big sisters and little sisters per se?
Oh, I've seen it. I mean, sometimes if they do quit, sometimes they move back to their hometown. But if they departed, left the world, not departed, if they retired on good terms, then that relationship is lifelong. Yeah, and I've seen it. I've seen it after many, many years. It's actually wonderful. It's just like in Japan, they had the kohai senpai relationship, right? And some people, like, the senpai becomes a shacho at a company, and he always hires his kohai from the high school or wherever. So I mean, in Japan, they actually do respect that relationship, that senpai kohai type thing, big sister, little sister in the sumo and the geisha world.
Interesting. Jeff asked, is it a very competitive environment for a young woman to become a maiko? I think of how competitive it is to even get chosen into like a good high school.
Well, I think it's to be chosen isn't competitive. To become good is competitive, because to be quite honest, these women are. So if you're a tea house mother or boarding house mother, I guess, I'm sure everyone looks for what they want, but from the house mothers I've talked to, they want to make a good investment. They don't want to put a lot of effort and money investing into a girl's future if she's just going to quit, if she's a quitter. So they want someone who's charming, someone who can be shaped. They don't want to know it all. I come in like, it's not like a pro athlete. They're not picking the cream of the crop dancers to come in and become Michaels. They want to take you and they want to shape you into the type of Michael Geiko for that district. So a girl comes in, a big know-it-all. I can do this, I can do that. They're like, great. Now let me teach you how to do it this way. So I don't think in the beginning, to be accepted, it's competitive, but to rise to the top and become, hired the most, because if you're not hired, if you don't build your clientele during that 5 to 7 year contract, when you move out of the house and become self-employed and independent, and you'd have to start paying your own bills, you're not going to have a clientele to help pay your bills. You won't have any work to pay your bills. So I think the competitiveness, I wouldn't even say competitiveness, you want more customers.
So leading into that, Browen Davis asked, what are the differences between geishas and hostesses?
Well, the first word right there, gay, art. And I'm not saying that some hostesses don't have studied Japanese dance. I'm sure some of them do. But the hostess is more of first of all, it's a more revealing attire, shall we say. You know, in the geisha culture, the nape of the neck is considered attractive. In the hostess world these days, I think it's more the cleavage and the mini skirts. However, that's not to say that all hostesses wear mini skirts and low cut tops. Some of the top end hostesses wear kimonos as well. So it's more of, it's a different type where the geisha have to come in and entertain with the arts. The hostesses, maybe the gift of the gab and the customer service. Because the maiko is not going to be like, oh, can I mix you a drink? You know, they don't know how to mix drinks. It's a different mindset altogether. And I think both are necessary in Japanese business world now. There's one thing I want to go on, since we're talking about hostess. The biggest difference in the geisha culture I've seen in the past 10 to 15 years is the amount of female clientele rising. And a lot of people think it's just a entertainment for men only. Well, the past 15, 20 years, I've seen a huge increase of female clients, also couples. So it's a changing industry, and people are hiring the geisha, the maiko, to see the arts. Women want to see dancing, you know. So that's very important. Without the gay of the geisha, they're just party companions, basically.
Christine. So Christine Chung asked, do geisha make good money? How do they get paid? Half of the bill of the customers? How does that work?
Now, first of all, the geisha, during their Michael Geiko, during their contract, they have no idea what the customer is being billed for their time. And they don't care. It's none of their business. It's between the tea house and the client. And after they make their debut, when they break off and they become independent, Jimai-san is what they say, they know that the registry office will pay them a certain amount per hour or per incense stick, as they used to do it. And they still don't know what the tea houses charge me. For example, let's say the geiko gets paid $200 an hour. They have no idea and could care less what I'm being charged by the tea house for their time. So they have no idea. They just know that the registry office will pay them a certain amount per engagement. And every tea house has a different set of billing, a different addition to the bill, depending on which tea house it is. Some districts are different than others. To be quite honest, everyone asks me, how much does it cost to hire a geisha? I have no idea, because I've never gotten the same bill twice. But can you make money when you finish your contract outside? You can make 6 figures. So it's not bad. You have to work. Remember, it's a job. You have to work for it.
Very interesting. So Floriano Philo asked, how often do they get married and start a family?
That is becoming more and more frequent these days. Yeah, the more and more frequent. I think, I think the pressure to get married at 22, 23, 24, 25 is off. Back in the day, if you were a Japanese woman and you weren't married at 24, 25, there's not a pleasant term used for you. They used to call you Christmas cake. So, but that is changing in Japan in general. So a geiko, a young girl at 15, maybe she wants to be a geiko for 10, 15 years. I don't think there's that much pressure on to get married and start a family. So, but a lot of them do quit to get married. They fall in love. A lot of people forget that there are women. They're geisha, people of the arts, person of the arts. And unfortunately, I'm going to segue a bit here. I was talking to a geiko the other day, and she said, Kyoto's becoming Disneyland, and I feel like Mickey Mouse, because people are chasing me down the streets like I'm an attraction, walking like Mickey Mouse walking down the street in Disneyland. So you have to remember, these are women, people. That's why I call it real geisha, real women. They're real people, and they fall in love just like anyone else. And they have off days and good days. However, they're paid to keep their off days kind of out of sight while they're working, just like any entertainer is. They're professional entertainers, but they fell in love. I mean, my first wife was from the geisha world as well, so I suppose she fell in love. At least I hope she did.
So then, to kind of lead into that question, Amit Newfield asked, who do the geisha marry? Are they customers or just regular men?
Well, one famous girl, I won't name her name, but she just retired recently to marry the son of one of her customers. But because of all the most 99% of the customers are married, they don't marry their customers. But a lot, a smart business decision when they marry a chef. Some of them have married chefs. The geiko takes care of the front of the house, and the husband takes care of the back of the house. And that's quite common. And some people just marry someone normal. They just fell in love and just they want to go back to normality. Not to say that geisha likes abnormal, but something a little bit more regular. But yeah, marry a lot of people. Sometimes their hometown sweetheart. Yeah. But yeah, they don't marry customers very often because a high percentage of the customers are married.
So maybe speaking of, I believe this is from Jeff, but speaking of those who do it for 10 to 15 years and then go back to a normal life, is there like some kind of idea of leaving the geisha life to get married? What careers are more popular for geishas to go into after they leave the geisha?
Well, one other option, a lot of geisha now, I wouldn't say a lot, but more and more geisha these days are opening their own bars while they're working as a geisha. So they have their little side, I wouldn't say side business. They'd work as a geisha from this time to this time, and then they go to their own bar that they work at that they own. They have a manager running it for them. So even if they quit and get married, sometimes they go into entertainment, whether it be a restaurant, maybe a little tiny bar, or something, a manageress of a big club in Tokyo or something. So because they have customer service skills, a lot of them go into hospitality.
Well, then the next question comes from Ramki. What is the percentage of geisha and geiko that remain, I guess, until retirement? My understanding is that several endure the training to graduate, but then immediately switch to become cross-cultural business negotiation trainers, florists, etc. That is, most folks get delusioned and diversify by using the geisha credentials.
Well, yeah, I mean, this goes back to your question earlier. Like, what do people look upon? Do they frown upon being a geisha? Well, there's one very successful YouTuber, influencer, who is a former geiko, and she's got a few million followers, and she's very entrepreneurial. So her being a former Kyoto geiko definitely is not hurting that. Does she doesn't just talk about it. It's more about being a mama and being a wife with a young baby in Tokyo. But the fact that she was a very successful Kyoto geiko definitely did not hurt the brand. So in that way, to be a former geiko in Kyoto, let's say you're from the countryside, and your family has a restaurant. You come to Kyoto, you're Michael geiko, 10, 15 years. You go back, your restaurant in the countryside now is I would say, we call it in Japanese, level up. You leveled up because you have a former Kyoto geisha running it. So in that way, they can use their training as a brand as well. And Kyoto's a brand in anything. If Kyoto chocolate plus 30% because it says Kyoto on it. So Kyoto's a brand. So if you're Kyoto geiko Michael, former Kyoto geiko Michael, it's definitely brandable. That's for sure.
So Tom Winston asked, do other Japanese cities have viable geisha districts?
Yeah, Tokyo has a few districts. There, Corona hit the geisha communities throughout Japan quite hard. But you have like little communities and like all over scattered out Japan. I can't remember. Don't quote me on this, but I think there's like 40 something geisha districts in Japan. The smallest one could be 2 people. Whereas Kyoto, you have, in 5 districts, you have around 200. But yeah, they're scattered throughout Japan. Kanazawa has there's 3 districts in Kanazawa. You have 7 in Tokyo. you have Niigata, you have Fukuoka. I mean, yeah, Sapporo. You have small little community in even Osaka now. You have, so they're scattered throughout. Gifu, yeah, they're scattered throughout Japan. And each, a lot of, because I said the tea house culture is basically Kyoto and Kanazawa, the tea house culture. Everywhere else you hire them through restaurants, so it's a different system. And sometimes, the first time visitors every few system isn't throughout Japan. It's easier to hire geisha through the restaurants. So as I said, as though they're scattered throughout Japan, the systems are different to hire them depending on the district. So, and the prices as well change.
Interesting. So Amit Newfield asks, can a foreign woman become a geisha? And I'd like to add to that question, if not a foreign woman, can a half Japanese woman become a geisha?
So there were a couple foreign women in different parts of Japan that did become geisha. One in Tokyo, well, two in Tokyo. One passed away recently. One retired a few years ago, but I heard she was thinking about coming back. And there are a couple that were in the hot spring towns that were foreign. Now, to answer the one about the half Japanese, that's quite interesting, because this year we were going to have a first half Michael debut in Kyoto. However, because her father's American, her mother's Japanese, but because of Corona, the union office made all the girls get vaccinations. Well, unfortunately, the mother of this girl was anti-vax. So unfortunately, that girl was forced to leave because, think about it. The Japanese, even though I said a lot of female clientele is increasing, a lot of it's elderly clients as well. So if you're unvaxxed. So anyway, she had to, I wouldn't say she got fired. She just vaxxed her, get out. And she got out. So that was going to be the first half Maiko in Kyoto. However, I talked to a lot of TOs. I don't think you'll be getting any full-fledged foreigners as geisha in Kyoto. That's a while off, I think.
Maybe one day.
Who knows? Maybe. I'm not against it.
So Tom Winston asked, are you offended by the term onsen geisha?
Well, back in the day, onsen geisha had definitely a derogatory connotation to it. But I just was hanging out with an onsen geisha the other day. She's from Kyoto. She came to Kyoto, and we just went out for coffee. And let me tell you, she's talented. Everything. Like, I think it depends on the onsen, and there's different. How would I say? Women onsen geisha. There's some women who put a lot more time on the arts and a lot more time in that party. But the onsen geisha, I mean, it's a term, and I don't. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't offend me. I think the question would be, does it offend them?
Thank you very much. Ramki asks, how do the geisha, or how does the geisha world and Maiko world perceive the damage done by memoirs of a geisha or other works?
I don't think they care. Not many of them saw the movie. Very few of them read the book. To be quite honest, I mean, that's one of my jobs in my business, is to explain how things are different these days, and and how there's a lot of artistic license and the blurring of the lines between professional woman and geisha that was a little, there's some things in the book that were incorrect, or definitely, my way or the highway type ways of thinking. And but I don't think it's hurt. Might have even, a lot of my clients say, oh, that's my favorite book. They came to Kyoto to see geisha. So I think it's been a positive, probably more so than negative, to be quite honest. Because if people think negative geisha, don't come to Kyoto. We don't need you. People think positive, come to Kyoto. So yeah.
So much. So we have a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
Tom Winston asked, you referred to economics several times. Can you guess how many artisans and other employees each geisha supports?
Oof. I can't give you a number, but I call it the geiko, the Hanamachi, that's the geisha quarter, Hanamachi ecosystem. Chefs. Well, let's start. Kimono makers, hair ornament makers, obi makers, traditional dance, art teachers, the tea houses, the architect, the traditional architecture, architects, sorry. Then you have the restaurants, then you have the taxis, then you have the people who work on the dance recitals, the traditional craftsmen building the sets behind the scenes. I mean, if the geisha culture disappeared tomorrow, there'd be a lot of people looking for a new job, that's for sure. Sorry, I can't give you a number on that one, but.
Thank you so much. So I think Fan Chin asked, are geishas employees of Ochaya or self-employed, like freelancers?
So during during their first year, their contracts, they are employees of the boarding house where they live. Then once they finish their contracts and move out, they're self-employed. They're employees of the geisha districts, paid by the registry office. But the tea houses employ them. So the tea houses will employ a geiko to work for them to bring their customers to their tea house. However, the tea house does not pay the geisha. The registry office does. The union office does. So they're during their apprenticeship, they're working, or they're not really working because they're not getting paid. They are earning money to earn their keep, so to speak, for all the food and board and kimonos that are being paid for by the boarding house. So there's two types of houses. You have a boarding house and you have a tea house. Some of them are combined, some of them are separate. But if you live in the boarding house, that's where your earnings go back to the person who invested into you. Once you finish your contract and move out, then you start making money for yourself, but the tea house hires you to make them money as well.
Thank you so much. Ramki asked, is it possible to switch between geisha houses? That is, if a geisha is trained in Gifu, but thinks she is better talented, can she switch to a house in Kyoto?
Very difficult. It happens vice versa most of the time. Not many Kyoto geisha have come from being geisha from other districts, but there's been geisha from other districts I've been through in Japan that, oh, weren't you in Kyoto? And some of them because they came from geisha families in other districts and they came to Kyoto to get their training, so to speak, and then came back to take care of the family business. So that's more, I've never met anyone who was a geisha in another district in Japan in Kyoto. However, sometimes there were in Kyoto between the 5 districts, one girl was at this one house and she moved to another house. Still not recommended and doesn't happen very often. But it does happen in districts in Kyoto.
So it sounds like Kyoto, the Kyoto district, is the most prestigious for geishas.
All right, well, prestigious, maybe it's more strict, more traditional. Here it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. And I'm not putting down any other districts, but in some other districts throughout Japan, it's just a job. Check it, punch in at 9 o'clock, punch out at 12 o'clock. So like Kyoto, it's a lifestyle, especially when you're living in the house. I mean, that's 24/7. That's not a job. That's a lifestyle. Keeping your hair up like this for a week at a time, that's a lifestyle. Only going home once a year to see your parents, that's a lifestyle.
That's quite the dedication, I think. So perhaps this is the last question, or the last 2 questions. So Jara Grace Cruz asked, considering the current speed of evolving trends and fads, especially with the rise of short form content, would you say that geisha culture is sustainable enough to survive for many, many more years or even generations to come?
That's a great question. That's the $1 million question right there. as I said, it's going to have to change. How it's going to change, more and more content is on the internet. As much as the tea house mothers don't like everything being put on the internet, people do. I think it's a benefit, but I think it's just going to change geisha entertainment. Lack of attention span. Even I found myself at a geisha dance last week in Fukuoka, and it was 1 hour dance, not the whole show, one dance. And I've even found myself who really appreciates and loves dancing. I was getting a little sleepy. So I think with this lower attention span and lack of human interaction skills, it's changing. You go to a geisha party sometimes now, and half the people are just taking photos the whole time. Geisha photo shoots are increasing, so it's more for content rather than putting down your cameras and having a good time, or putting down your phones and not looking at your phones. Yeah, so I think, will it be able to sustain? I don't know. That's $1 million question. My opinion changes probably every month on this, and flip-flops back and forth sometimes as well. So
Thank you so much, Mr. MacIntosh. I guess in conclusion, do you have any other final thoughts about geisha, and perhaps, what you would like to share with the audience about, the future, perhaps?
Well, I just think that if you have friends that you hear saying, geisha, I would never let my husband hire one. I can't believe, I'd never let my daughter be like that. Don't judge them. It's something, I don't judge parts of different cultures that I don't know anything about, or because I read a book on. So if I could just let the geisha be geisha. It's a thing that goes on in Japan. If it doesn't affect your life at all, just let them be and stop. I get a lot of clients that come in and they just come in with this negative, derogatory thing because I just don't get it. And I'm like, well, you don't have to get it. So just let the geisha be, and enjoy what you can from it. Any part of any culture has something beautiful to be enjoyed. So that would be my last ending comment.
Beautifully said, Mr. MacIntosh. And thank you once again for your presentation today and taking time out of your day to be with us. Once again, thank you to our program sponsor, the Japan Foundation New York. And lastly, I would like to present some upcoming events. Thank you, everyone who stayed with us for the last couple of minutes. If you don't mind, we would like to present a couple of upcoming events for Whitecaps. So the next online webinar is for the Indo-Pacific Dialogue. It's going to be on Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific Plan, Transformation, or Evolution. Dr. Nanae Baldolf is going to be the speaker for this online presentation. This is going to be on Thursday, December 14th at 18:30 Japan Standard Time, and Dr. Stephen Nagy will be the moderator for this presentation. Again, this is an online presentation, so please register and join us for this event. The next Getting to Know Japan webinar, which will be our first for 2024, is going to be on Yasuke, the African Samurai. It is going to be on Tuesday, January 9th at 10 a.m. Japan Standard Time. So Professor Thomas Lockley will be the presenter for this event. So again, please consider joining us after the new year for the next Getting to Know Japan webinar on January 9th. And of course, we have the Whitecaps YouTube channel. So if you would like to be able to watch any of the webinars we've had thus far this year, please check out our Whitecaps YouTube channel. Please subscribe, please like, please comment. We would love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you so much. I will paste the link in the chat. All right. And to conclude, I want to say happy holidays for everybody who celebrates. I wish everyone a happy new year, and we hope to see you all again here for Getting to Know Japan on January 9th. Thank you once again, Mr. MacIntosh. Thank you, Jeff, for the assistance this year. And thank you to our wonderful audience who joined us today and who have joined us for multiple webinars this year. We very much appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the new year. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.